this a game or is it real? Is this a game or is it real? What's the difference? Is this a game or is it real?
Hello and welcome to Out of the Game, episode 10, I believe it is. This is Jeff Green, and I'm here with two of my fellow podcastees. One would be Sean Elliott.
Hello, I am here.
And two would be Nguy Kroll.
Hello.
And what the fuck is Luke's excuse this week?
His dad's in town. He warned us last week.
Do we consider that a valid excuse?
I think we do. It's better than Robert's excuse, which is that he found a new way to vaporize marijuana.
Yeah. So is he actually high right now, or?
Robert, I would assume so. He's basically in this kind of like hyperbaric chamber that he says has geodesic and analgesic properties, and he says he expects to emerge from it at the end of that. Well, Monday morning, so tomorrow morning.
Wow.
We're actually just kidding. Robert has never touched any illegal substances.
Robert's totally straight edge as far as I hear.
He is. That's the joke that we make about Robert.
Right.
So
Robert's motto is and he's starting a podcast called this. It's like I don't smoke, drink, cuss, or chew. Don't hang around with those that do.
Right.
And as for Luke, I guess one could suppose it's legitimate to spend time with the man who donated the sperm that gave birth to you.
I suppose.
This
We'll
is
give
a
him
father,
pass.
Jeff, a dad himself.
Yeah, I think, or hopefully I'm a dad. At least that's what
Oh.
I've been told is. But I think Luke is on probation. He's on double secret probation.
Jeff, it's 5 seconds too late, but I was going to ask you if you were if the fact that one of your daughters is a Latina is what made you wonder if you were in.
Yeah, it's funny not to go there, since we shouldn't, but just on that one point, when people see Cristina Sanchez referring to me as dad, let it be known that that's just kind of a Ziff in-joke thing, and those wondering, she is not actually my daughter. So just to clear up that misconception, which I've seen both in Twitter and on NeoGAF and other places.
Yeah, you make
but what you're really
jokes.
saying is that her mom should not hit you up for child support.
She should not.
Got it.
But if she wants to visit me late at night, that's a different story.
I'm just Jeff. Though we'll leave it at this: that you're worse than the dude who played Kramer on Seinfeld when he went and did stand up.
I'm worse than that? Wow, that's kind of harsh, dude.
Remember his thing, dude? He got busted saying some stupid ass racist shit. And he was like,
I do.
It was just a joke. I wasn't
Michael.
serious."
You mean Michael Richards?
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah,
don't compare me to that, man. That ain't right.
See why this is so fucked up about doing a podcast on Skype. There's I'm waiting for the telegram to come back when that fucking joke makes a lick of sense to anyone.
That was a genuine racist rant he went on. I was doing shtick. Did you hear, though, about the Seinfeld reunion coming up?
No, I regret bringing this bullshit up now.
On this coming... See? Now you're stuck with it. On the upcoming season of Curb Your Enthusiasm, they're all going to be together again. But the one thing it made me wonder about, as far as that goes, is Michael Richards still a liability? Like,
well, he's the one person that hasn't confirmed, right?
Right. And maybe it would be better off if he just went away.
He's a liability.
Yeah, but you don't want to see like him and Crazy Eyes Killer go at it.
That actually would be awesome. Yeah.
You know, maybe Wanda up in the mix.
Uh-huh. What I wonder is what was the character's name? The young guy from the Black family who Larry bonded with and had all those great scenes with. What was his name on the show?
I don't even watch the show, but it sounds like you're getting close to saying that Kramer had a black friend.
No. Larry David did, not Kramer.
Okay, so Larry David can't be racist.
Let's move on.
But the one thing it does raise though is like there's all of this stuff now, like these rewinds and like remixes, like the whole thing with Ridley Scott doing a prequel for Alien.
Yeah. Yep.
right? And I was gonna Twitter about it, but enough time had passed that I just sort of let it go. But I was sort of like, am I the only person who is not super inspired by the fact that everyone got excited because Ridley Scott was back on board because he directed Alien, and Alien's a terrific movie, but Ridley Scott's kind of like the definition of a director whose movies rarely surpass their scripts. Like there's some directors who can actually take like a decent script and just like flip it. And he's not one of those guys.
Right.
So to me, I'd be more excited if I heard like a really amazing writer was on board than I was the fact that Ridley Scott's on board. I mean, it'll look cool. He definitely knows how to shoot the shit out of shit, but that didn't get me excited at all.
It didn't get me excited at all. I'm completely with you, and I say it as a fan of the series. But I think it's kind of it seems like sort of like nostalgic fanboy nerdism that they're trying to fulfill the way some of these old like Transformers things are. That it sounds better than the reality may be. I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll end up being awesome, but it didn't make me think like, finally, oh my god, yay, the franchise is rescued because Ridley Scott's back on. I mean, maybe Alien's time has passed. Do we need a frickin' fifth Alien movie?
I just got the goddamn PR thing that EA is going to publish the game based on this movie. Stop digging yourself into these fucking holes, Jeff.
I know you're kidding. Are you kidding?
Thank you. Yes,
okay.
I'm kidding. That was a joke.
God. Thank God. You should have, like, if there was a heart monitor attached to me right now.
Well, I mean,
now my neighbor's going to mow the lawn.
Well, Sean, I mean, did you like the original Alien? I mean, where did you sort of split with the franchise, or did the franchise ever mean anything to you in the first place?
I thought the original film was fantastic. I found something to enjoy about almost all of them. I mean, the third one, it was it looked excellent. David Fincher's always, stylistically there, and then yet again it looked excellent for the fourth one when they had Juno Caro, which was like fresh off of City of Lost Children. So it was such a bizarre. That's the thing, I guess.
Yeah.
With people who direct alien films, you really never know. No matter what their resume has in it, you never know what's going to happen. But I think I'm with you, Jeff. Where the only reason, I mean, I think it's a good idea. It's a prequel. But part of me looks at it like I'll watch it and it'd be entertaining, but I regard it in the way I do a lot of comic book stuff. Like I just this past week found out that Batman had been killed, and so I asked a coworker who had been reading up on it. I was like, so who killed him? And he's like, Darkseid. And if you know anything about comic books, he's some kind of like fucking omnipotent space deity, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like
Wait, Batman's dead?
Yes, and not only that, but he was killed by. So imagine Batman and everything you know about Batman and what makes it work. Like the most recent Batman film. Personally, I thought it was great, but there's a lot of editing I would do to it and just pare it down to every interaction with the Joker, Batman, and Harvey. But it's always about this intimate connection with the people he ends up fighting and his relationship to his city and his own ethics. And suddenly he's in space fighting some alien, and the alien kills him. But then even worse, like I hear that he's coming back. It was like the same thing with they just did this with Captain America, right? And I'm going to spoil this, so if you're really like wondering how Captain America came back to life. So they set that up, and it was like he was killed like on the steps of the Washington Monument or something by what appeared to be a sniper, and that seemed interesting enough, right? Like take him out that way. But let him go, And then, but he's back. But the thing is that some fucking face attached to a box had figured it out that if they could put him in between time, whatever that means, it would be good for them in some way, and whatever that means. So there was actually a second gunman who shot him with some kind of time bullet that makes him just fluctuate between universes. And it's like at that point, I picked this thing up, and Brian K. Vaughan wrote it. He writes Lost scripts as well. And it was just like the biggest fuck you that I'd ever received. It's like, well, are you kidding me? Like, but so anyway,
but dude,
back
I mean,
to
like
Alien.
with gravity, the right sort of gravity fields, you bend gravity like right. You could have those folds in space time on 11 levels of. I mean, I'm just saying it could happen. It could happen, yo.
Labial like folds in the space time continuum, and then Captain America, aka Steve Rogers, will nestle inside of him. And when he's in there. You can't.
Why do they even bother with that shit?
You can't save America.
Well, I guess here's the one thing. And not sort of cut you off, Sean. Hold your thought. But is that
I was babbling.
The one? No. Because the one thing is if they already know that they're going to bring him back, like they have to know that Captain America, they're not going to keep him dead forever. Wouldn't it be worth sort of getting the whole Marvel staff together? And they know they're going to kill him. They know they're going to bring him back. Why not get everyone together and figure out something that's entertainingly plausible, as opposed to just completely ridiculous, and then just set it up and go from there.
You think that as a writer for a project like that, you would write the beginning and the ending first, and then work out everything that comes in between. But maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe, but that's even more frightening. The fact that they sat down in advance and said, "Oh God, they're never going to see this coming." I wonder why.
Yeah. That shit is just so like boring and tired to me. I don't even know why they bother. It exhausts me, and it's one of the reasons that I ended up quitting comics, was just because, like, we all know he's coming back. I mean, the only reason to do something like kill Batman is if you're really gonna kill Batman. Like, do it and mean what you do.
There's
like,
a hip hop version. It's just when everyone says, "This is my final LP, and then I'm gonna retire."
Yeah, no
and then
kidding.
You see him again. They sell extra copies, and they come back. But don't let that make you quit comics, though. I mean, there's many good comics that...
No, there are good ones. Well, it made me quit superhero comics. I mean, even if I slowly work my way back into other comics, which I do love, and really the reason I quit comics cold turkey is actually financial, not because of any philosophical thing. But I do know that if I felt like I had more disposable income and more time to read, I would not go back to superhero stuff, because... In the 10 years that I've quit here, and I hear you guys or whoever read message board threads about where Batman is at or whatever, it's just like the same shit over and over and over and over and over.
Right?
It's like I feel like they should just retire the whole goddamn line of DC and Marvel.
I think so too. The nice thing though is that because they've been around so long, and there's no way that anyone could ever establish some kind of continuity, no matter how many miniseries they make for that express purpose, that you can pretty much just cherry pick and decide for yourself what you were going to accept. Like, I also heard that they're bringing the Spider clone back, which was this whole heinous bullshit where they sprung the big surprise on their readership that Peter Parker wasn't actually Peter Parker, and the Spider-Man he was a clone this entire time. Yeah. And so for the past 30 years worth of stuff that you've been reading, it really wasn't him, and then they bring someone else back, and so most people just were like, okay, cool, you got us. We never saw that coming 30 years ago when you started setting the fucking plot up.
All this time he was a clone, and they all knew. They were just waiting to spring this great plot device on us.
Well, the thing is...
That's not a sign of creative desperation.
It sounds... They did that same thing before we lose the opportunity. They did that same fucking thing with Ripley in the Alien series. And I'm not sure if it was in the movies or if it was in the... it was in the movies.
No, it was in the movie.
Yeah, the fourth one.
The one thing I'll say about that... So... Going through the Alien chronology for a second, because I think this is actually an interesting conversation. So the first two are quite good, and what I like about the transition... So the first one is a monster movie / haunted house in outer space. Right. And these people are all sort of varying degrees of... they're sort of worker bees for the most part, and that's kind of what... They got that space trucker kind of vibe really, really right, and... Looking at it without knowing what had happened, you would think that Tom Skerritt would have been the one to survive. Sorry, spoiler alert for those people who haven't seen it. And the fact that it's Ripley, Sigourney Weaver's character ends up surviving, going into deep sleep and whatnot. Then you go to Aliens, and a couple of things happen. One is they jump forward about 50, 60, 70 years in the future. Her daughter is even dead. And she's, plunged back into this nightmare all these years in the future. Now people have colonized this planet. So there's this sense that when you go from that one, and then the third one, where the monster now, the alien, infects her while she's in the sleep chamber again at some point in the future. So it's kind of like she can't escape this thing no matter how far she goes through space and time. But the other thing that was interesting about Aliens is that Aliens, they switch genres. So the first one is this monster movie, haunted house movie. The second one is like a Vietnam movie with aliens. Mm-hmm. And I think that was part of what sort of gave it this new thing. Now you've got this military outfit, you've got the corporation again, and all this stuff. Fincher did a lot of really good stuff with the third one, but the big mistake that he made was, at least for an American audience, is casting a bunch of bald-headed white Brits as the prisoners, with the exception of Charles Dutton, because what it meant was, to American ears, the guys all looked the same and sounded the same. So as they get killed one by one, you can't tell who's who.
Right.
It's really hard to care about people as they die. But back to Sean's point, because I do have a point, is that with the fourth one, with her coming back as a clone, on one hand it's a little cheesy, but on the other hand, I think Sigourney Weaver found a way to play it well. But also it's like this idea that even death isn't enough to spare her from this kind of nightmare. You know, that there is some sort of larger relationship between the character of Ellen Ripley and this alien that they're literally joined at the hip.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I think you make good points, but it also seems like sort of like that's the justification that they would give to just like kind of keep milking this franchise, because they had a good thing in the first two movies, and it just seems like you just wish there was more of a sense of like, we made a couple great movies, now let's apply that same creative energy to a different IP, instead of just keep going back to the well and keeping further like sort of diminishing the whole feeling of the IP itself, you know, of like, you know, all the Halloween movies and Godfather 3, you know, sometimes you just want somebody to go like, you know what, let's just let this sit where the good stuff was and come up with something better. You know what I mean? Something more original.
One thing it seems has been series canon since the very beginning is that there's certain central mysteries that they'll never explain, and that's one of the things, continuing to tease those mysteries in the way that Lost does, you know, where it seemed like they'd never get off the island until they actually did, and then they got back. It seems like they can't answer those, and that's specifically, what is the species that created the alien in the first place? Which it was shown, you know, in silhouette in it looked like the Elephant Man or something, and I think what the fans called the space jockey in the original one. And then also how the mining company had its first encounter with this craft and actually knew that it was there when they sent the crew to investigate, if there was more to it than just, I mean, it's been a while since I've watched them all, so I'm sure I'm getting a lot of stuff wrong.
Right.
But the thing is I wonder if they will yet again, even in the prequel, if they will risk answering those and have it being disappointing in the way that the comic books tried to answer those, and it was just utterly disappointing. And then also, while I'm geeking out on it, I was surprised that they never did the whole Earth War thing, where it's basically, you know, Halo 2, where the alien gets on world and basically,
which they did do in the comic. I mean, I guess for me, the other thing too with a prequel is you don't know till they do it. I mean, I guess part of what we're getting into and what Jeff is questioning is even reboots, and maybe you're even questioning them even if they're done well. I mean, I don't know, because I don't think we've talked about it a ton on this podcast, but so I don't know how you guys felt about Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. I thought The Dark Knight was quite good. Quite well done, and there was something like where definitely not only was it continuing a reboot, and I think I have said on here that I think Dark Knight is in itself a reboot of Batman Begins, a partial reboot. Go ahead.
No, you continue.
I was just going to say that, but even the good ones, do even the good ones speak to some sort of creative bankruptness in Hollywood and even in the audience, like where we want them if they're done well, but if they're not, then we bag on them. But it's that same impulse on either side that guarantees they're going to be remade or rebooted.
I think in the case of Batman, that's a case where I was actually, you know, that was a franchise that needed some kind of creative salvation after the horrible George Clooney one. So in a way, it was sort of like necessary to write the universe that they made a new one to make Batman cool again. So I'll be hypocritical there and say that like I'm glad that they milked that franchise a little more to get Batman cool again. But I'll also take maybe the unpopular opinion that I actually thought that Batman Begins was the better movie of the two. I will say, of course, like most of us agree, that Heath Ledger was like fucking incredible. But like I really think in retrospect, after seeing both those movies and of time passing, that movie was more like the amazing immortal Heath Ledger performance plus Batman movie, whereas Batman Begins was like a really pure, awesome Batman origin story. I also felt like Christian Bale was better and, of course, more the central focus in the first movie as well. I felt like, the stuff that he got criticized for in the second movie, his horrible voice and stuff like that, I agreed with that. It was very distracting. So I felt like the Batman Begins was a great reboot. And Dark Knight was amazing because of Heath Ledger, but not necessarily for the whole movie. Well, it did have that brilliant opening scene. That was awesome. But now I would worry about a third Batman movie again. Like, I wish they'd leave it alone now.
Well, look at the double standard, though. I mean, assuming you didn't think that the last Alien movie was all that great, wouldn't you then, by your own reasoning, want another one by Ridley Scott so that it could be restored to its former glory?
Right, except for the fact that, as N-Guy said at the beginning of this, like, having Ridley Scott as a director isn't necessarily a guarantee of quality. Like, Ridley Scott being attached to it did not make me go, like, oh, thank God. It's more like if, I don't know, some other up-and-coming or hot writer and director was attached to it, then I might be able to go, okay, awesome, like a Christopher Nolan, say. Or somebody like that, where you can say, okay, this is a guy who takes chances, who's like awesome all on his own right, and now we're going to get his take on the franchise, rather than Ridley Scott, who's however old, who has nothing to prove anymore, and may just be fucking cashing a check because his daughters are going to private school or something. I don't know.
So maybe like Guillermo del Toro, or maybe if it turns out to be good, like Neil Blomkamp, who was supposed to direct the Halo movie, but is now doing District 9.
Yeah, there you go. Like, I'm more excited for District 9 than I am for the Aliens prequel. So.
Real quick, is District 9 the Park War movie?
The what?
No, that was District 13.
Okay, so what's District 9? I've been seeing a lot of like online activity talking about it, but I was like, I thought that movie came out a long time ago.
No, it's like it's kind of almost
movie.
In some ways a spiritual remake of that movie Alien Nation, which I think James Cameron produced but did not direct.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so the premise is that aliens have landed on the planet some time ago, and it's set in South Africa, and it looks like they've essentially created a township where the aliens are housed, and have been there for some years, and then something causes open warfare to break out among humans and aliens. And the trailer gives some hints away as to what may have been the core of the conflict, but I don't want to reveal that. I think the trailer sort of revealed a bit too much, and I don't want to reveal that on here, but it looks pretty interesting.
This doesn't have anything to do with those private short films that were released years ago, does it? Where it was basically a sci-fi war in South Africa?
I think that's the same director. It was, like I said, it was the guy who was supposed to direct the Halo movies.
Alive in, yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, going back to, and this is like where, we're part of when you're familiar with a character, when you're familiar with a world, especially if there have been examples where it's been done well, and, Alien and Aliens, there are a lot of sequels that aren't good, and Aliens was a case where you had an excellent sequel, and so it makes us very hopeful that the future will bring, another good movie. And if I'm not mistaken, Aliens came out in 86, and I think Alien 3 came out in 93. So sometime it passed. You do want to go back to that world and see what's going to be done. But, I just called up this article that I remembered, twittering about when it came out. It was an April 7th Hollywood Reporter article called Budget Conscious Hollywood in Grip of Remake Fever. And here's a list of the movies from the 80s that are being remade right now, or in the process of either being developed or shot. Romancing the Stone, Footloose, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Dune, The Karate Kid, Red Dawn, RoboCop, The Big Chill, Arthur, Ghostbusters, and The Neverending Story.
Oh,
And
you're
he,
fucking killing me here.
dude, but that's not even the
You know, when
scariest
you asked
quote
if
in the
it's
story.
milking it,
Just one
it's-
thing. Let me finish. The scariest quote in the story is, as one producer put it, the 90s are totally fair game.
Oh God.
Which is inevitable. I mean, it was the same thing's been happening with clothing styles. I mean, it's not recent, but you know, in the same way that in the 90s began to finally return to some of the fashions of the 70s, which were entirely taboo in the 80s. But the thing I was going to compare it to is the milking. Of course, you can't just blame the studios. You have to. The audience is every bit as much of a part. But it's really like there's so many choices to make in a capitalist society where there's 60 brands of cereal and there's two choices for president, but I mean, how are you going to ultimately decide what you're going to drink or whatever when there's so many things? And familiarity is often what does it for people. You know, you just become, for the same reason that you see ads that don't even need they don't need context or message or anything. They essentially just amount to a logo and a reminder that this company exists and that they're presumably still in the same business. And just that people go with what's familiar. And I think the same goes for entertainment as it does for whatever box of cereal you reach for, you know?
Yeah, that list just like completely depressed me that you just read, because some of those movies, I mean, I'm going to say right here, you cannot fucking improve on the original RoboCop. You just can't. That movie is a classic. There's no way in hell.
Okay, well here's one thing though for you.
Better.
Here's one thing. Would you be more interested if I told you that the person behind this remake is Darren Aronofsky?
Oh shit, is it?
That's the person who's supposed to be
Wasn't
remaking
Aronofsky's last movie Requiem for a Dream?
it. No.
He made The Wrestler, actually.
But
Yeah,
he did Requiem for a Dream?
Yes, he
Yes,
did.
he did.
Okay, I'm
He did that.
not interested.
And he did The Fountain.
The Fountain and The Wrestler and, of course, Pi.
So what this means is that the guy in RoboCop who gets hit by the truck and turns into pudding on the windshield, that the lower half of his body will get turned into pudding, and then the upper half of him will land in the street, and then he'll sit there and people will come by and he'll ask for change and they'll spit on him, and then he'll become addicted to heroin, and like they'll just you see where I'm going, like just every
Yeah.
opportunity to make the people as humanly miserable as possible, and that goes for every single character in the entire movie.
I just think the first RoboCop is just classic, and that you needed Paul Verhoeven's unique sensibility to make it as great as it was. And yes, and Guy, I'll admit that when you said that, that makes me go like, okay, cool. At least, I mean, Aronofsky is cool in his own way, the way Verhoeven is. So that gives me a little hope. But what I'd rather see is Aronofsky just make his own movie that's as cool as RoboCop, but that's his own damn thing. Why go back to the well, especially when you're as creative as Aronofsky? Make your own one that we can then, in 20 years, be looking back and saying, you know, whatever.
Well, it goes to, I mean, the thing is that what Sean said lays out why they do it. It's familiarity. I mean,
Yeah,
think how many
familiarity.
times, like when on a Friday night where you go to the movies, you're looking for it. You're at the end of a week of work. You're looking for a certain kind of experience, and you almost, in some ways, want to be guaranteed the experience that you're going to get. And
I guess
what's safer than a sequel or a reboot, something that you know you liked before, either a previous installment or when it was originally done. So when you see the Friday the 13th the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot, you know you're going to jump. You know there's going to be Freddy. You know, and here's another example. It could even be the cast. Do you know who's playing Freddy in the new Nightmare on Elm Streets?
No.
Jackie Earl Haley.
Okay, yeah.
And you're just kind of like, when I heard that, I was like, fuck, that's brilliant casting. I kind of actually want to go see it, because this is the guy who played, he was in Little Children. He played Rorschach. Really, really good. And it's like,
good casting.
Yeah, but I'm not part of the same problem.
Yeah, I hear you.
There's potential, and I think of it for RoboCop. When you think of how much has passed, how much has changed in the past 15 years or so, whenever it was released, as far as both the possibility of cybernetics, the way that people interact with machines, that there's certainly an enormous amount of space to have an entirely different creative vision. It would be kind of like if you remade. I'm not going to say this because I think that it's just as taboo as things come to remake a Stanley Kubrick movie. But like if you did remake 2001, but of course you called it, you bumped it ahead and it was 2041 or something. It would be interesting to see how different our expectations for the future are. But and it's also like, I don't actually mean this. I was going to say something dumb about how it's entirely appropriate for the times where people are used to going on Facebook and seeing familiar faces, but also sort of being surprised at how different they are now. So that's what RoboCop, that's what they said when they sat down in that board meeting, and they're like, you know what, this is going to be art.
Yeah.
That's what they said.
Yeah, you guys are making good points, and I think that certainly Aronofsky is a guy who's proven that he does have a vision, and so if he is able to take, if he's able to do what you're saying and like take the premise of the story and do a 2010 take on it, incorporating things that have happened in society and culture and technology since then that could be really awesome. And I like one example that made me think of just now is this Prisoner reboot that's coming up on AMC. Have you both you guys seen the TV show from the 60s?
No.
I've seen episodes. I haven't watched the whole thing.
Okay, well, both you two and anyone else listening, just go rent the DVDs or buy the DVDs because it's one of the classic television shows of all time. Totally holds up today. Just absolutely brilliant show by Patrick McGoohan. You can't even say it's like ahead of its time because it was just like, out of this one guy's brain came this just incredible show. And just very briefly, if you don't know what it's about, the premise is a secret agent has quit his job for reasons unknown to us. This is before episode 1 even comes on, and as episode 1 begins, he has been transported overnight, kidnapped, and taken to a place called the Village. He has no idea where on earth he is in reality. It's the surreal storybook kind of village. He's been given a number 6.
He runs into Captain America. And Captain America says that Kafka put him in there.
Yeah, and Batman with a nipple suit on, and it's a 13 episodes. I probably have the number wrong. Maybe it's 20. I forget. This was a British series in the 60s, and it's about his experience in trying to find out where he is, how he got there, why he's there, and all that.
It sounds great. It sounds like it's an adaptation of The Castle, though. Is it? Kafka's Castle?
It's absolutely Kafka-esque. Whether it was directly influenced by Kafka, I don't know. I'm sure it's right there on the web. I'm sure it's very Kafka-esque. Anyway, so this has been like one of the untouchable TV classics for forever. But AMC, the station who's making Mad Men now and Breaking Bad, they're bringing it out in November, and I was definitely amongst the hardcore Prisoner fans who was just like, oh my God, please don't go there. Don't do this to us.
Did you think, what about your daughter? Like, that here would be an opportunity where not only would she be exposed to it, albeit in a different form, but that exposure might encourage her to check out the original? Whereas if you just went to your daughter regardless and said, hey, check out this TV series from the 60s, she would just be like, yeah, Dad.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, AMC has been streaming it. I believe they're streaming the original series for free on their website now for people to see what the fuss was about. So you could do that too. But after, I guess they released a big, huge preview of the upcoming reboot, or remake, it's not a reboot, at Comic-Con, and I watched it online, and damn if it didn't look great, And in the way that we're talking about with RoboCop or other things, in which they just said, okay, it's like 40 years later in real time, where's society at now? What's the 2010 take on this thing that was done in the 60s and was very much, at least in part, a commentary on culture at that time.
Right.
So, like,
and
I'm totally psyched for the reboot.
I mean, the cast here is Ian McKellen.
Oh, Ian McKellen is, yeah, right.
Jim Caviezel. Who are two? I mean, I really dug Jim Caviezel in Thin Red Line. And Ian McKellen's a fabulous actor. So it's like, they hooked you.
Yeah. Yeah, they totally did. And so, there's definitely a case where, a remake is fine. So I'm being completely hypocritical and random.
And what
in
about
I
the
think
remake
is
of Battlestar
rebootable or not.
Galactica? Think of that too. I mean, there's
That was fucking brilliant. I
and
guess I
that
think
was a remake. Talk about like what I said, a pitch perfect example of taking and entirely re-envisioning it, but for the current space that people live in.
Yeah, I guess I'm feeling it's the difference between like a legitimate new take on something that could have fresh eyes on it, and just like an extension of a milking of a franchise.
Right.
Like to me, it doesn't feel like maybe enough time has gone by between all these Alien movies, or the fact that they're continuing considering it a prequel. Like I don't know, it just feels like I'd rather them wait 10 years and then just make a new Alien 1 again. Maybe that's what I'm feeling.
Would either of you
No.
be interested in seeing a remake of the television series V, or either that, or just an adaptation of Arthur Clarke's Childhood's End?
Well, speaking of
yeah, I would be.
that's our tie-in to video games for this week. For those people who
Yay!
wish we would talk more about games, because the production company behind the remake of V is HD Films.
There is a
and-
remake of it coming?
Oh yeah, you didn't know this?
No.
Yeah, it's coming to. Well, at least the. I don't know if the series got picked up. I think it did, but they did a pilot. It's coming to ABC, and it's why am I spacing on his last name? But it's Jason Hall. Jason Hall's production company that he got after he stepped down from running Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment. It's his.
That's crazy.
It's his production company that's producing V, the TV
Wow,
series.
good for him.
Yeah.
Isn't he Jace now? He's Jace Hall.
That's right, Jace Hall.
Didn't
Hall,
he do
yes.
like interview in bed with like some Playboy models or something for some game?
That was Dennis Dyack, I think.
Oh, Dyack did that, but was that on the Jace Hall show?
No, that was
why am
not
I
the Jace Hall
connecting
show. That was Complex Magazine.
them? Oh, okay.
They did that on their website, where they had Cliffy and Cliff Blazinski, Aaron Greenberg from Microsoft, and gosh, I'm losing it here. Dennis Dyack also did his interview in bed with the models, which NeoGaf had a fun old time with. But yeah, so Jace Hall is behind the new V series, and I love the original miniseries on TV. I read the book, and I'm curious to see how it turns out, and that's the whole thing. I mean, maybe there's just nothing wrong with us ultimately being hypocritical. Maybe it's fine to say, look, we like the ones that are good, we don't like the ones that are bad. Reboots are generally a good way to go, because at least you're sort of bringing more of your original spin, and maybe there's a difference between a re-envisioning like Battlestar Galactica and The Karate Kid, which so far sounds like the only twist on it is that it's Will Smith's son who's going to be playing Daniel-san.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
we're jumping all over, but I'm still sitting here thinking about the V series, and when my mind's not remembering when the fucking chicks were guzzling down rats like they were serpents. I was thinking, I wonder how it's going to work so soon after the Battlestar Galactica, because they handled so many common themes there, where they had basically miscegenation between species, where which they did that in V. There was the pregnancy in the second season, and I mean, just basically everything up until the big reveal. They seem to be superficially indistinguishable from people. The whole like otherness and all that. It'll be interesting to see if they just copy it or they have an entirely different take on it.
Yeah.
No,
I'm up for it. This sounds good.
And the thing is, too, is it makes us think, like, what do we have the same issues or concerns about sequels in video games?
Yeah. That's
Or
a good question.
is it different in games where a lot of times in the first game, whatever mechanics the game is built on aren't necessarily perfected. And
Well, I'm going to
they get
come
a
out
ch-
and say this right away about that. I think that the more Sims games there are out there, the better the world is.
That's kind of indisputable.
We agree with that, Jeff. No, and
God.
I see both
That
your
was a
points, and
stunned
I do agree that there's merit on the mechanical sense in sequels for video games, because oftentimes, I mean, we are discovering so many things as we go along, and the medium. I say this all the time, but the medium is comparatively much younger than cinema, And it does make sense. Whether or not you actually need it to officially be a sequel to do that, right? Like, you could make Halo and you can call the next thing something else and still retain all those lessons and build on them. But, it's kind of a case-by-case thing, right? I mean, I think I really appreciate the cases where not only is there mechanical and system progress, but you could see they found what the heart of the original game was and say, let's build a sequel based on the larger ideas and themes here. Not let's just take the characters, even though they didn't have much character to speak of in the first place, and put them on the box because they're already familiar and we've already spent millions of dollars promoting this face. But because they say, what is ultimate, like you were saying, Ngai, when presumably the creators of the various Alien sequels had to stop and sort out for themselves what each of the Forerunners movies was about, and if there's any common theme and if there's something they could do with it. And I think we're seeing more games do that. It's interesting. For some reason, I just thought, this is almost an aside, in my own head, I regard all of the Team Ico games as sequels, but even though they're technically not, that's a case where you can see they have the common themes in their sequels in that respect, but they're not just, hey, here's 2 more levels and 2 different guns.
Which is interesting. I mean, I guess in the case of the Team Ico games, is that none of them were massive hits. So in that sense, they could afford to just make them spiritual sequels and not be tied to making Ico 2 or Shadow of the Colossus 2, but take things or aspects that worked and bring them over and completely reinvent. Whereas, I mean, the challenges
of real quick, what if Shadow of the Colossus was called Ico 2? Maybe it would have been more successful? Maybe it's because maybe it has something to do. There's a correlation with the fact that they refuse to create direct sequels, that none of them are ever extreme hits.
Or you could go with the colon approach, right? So, which is the example I was going to go to, which is Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Call of Duty World at War. But look, I mean, the challenges around brand building, which any developer and publisher has to take into account. I mean, the business side of making games is that Infinity Ward and Activision tried to go out with just Modern Warfare 2 as the name of Infinity Ward's next game, and lo and behold, sometime within the last few weeks, it was revealed that the game it's now actually going to be called Call of Duty: Modern Warfare 2, and the reason was, I think it was EDAR, EEDAR, which does a lot of analysis and market analysis for game publishers, and what they found was awareness dropped precipitously when the game was called Modern Warfare 2, when people were told the game was Modern Warfare 2, as opposed to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
Yep.
And that's off a game that sold more than 13, 14 million copies worldwide.
Yeah. I think that was, I have to say, a smart decision on their part, obviously, to add the Call of Duty.
They're trying to put money in their pockets and, keep the lights turned on and all those things. And and the fact is, I remember Warren Spector gave a talk several GDCs ago about the fact that it is possible to have innovation within IPs. It doesn't necessarily hold you back completely. And he was sort of saying, I'd love to do Tomb Raider. I'd love to be asked to do Tomb Raider or something like that. But they can often be a creative prison. I mean, look at people still complain about perfunctory combat in the Tomb Raider games and things they don't like. But if they steer too far away from the tomb running and exploration, then fans complain about that. And I think you've seen more successful takes on particular aspects of the Tomb Raider formula in Uncharted and in Prince of Persia than they've been able to do, because at least the teams that have worked on the Tomb Raider games they've been maybe a little bit too imprisoned by the legacy of Lara Croft. At some point,
what specifically have they been imprisoned by, though? Because when I think of it, I mean, this was a series that from the beginning, from the very first game, had dinosaurs and aliens in it, which pretty much said you could do what you want. I mean, that was just my thought with that. I haven't played every game in the series. I stopped playing it after the second one, but it seems to me like it would be relatively easy to get away with pretty much whatever your heart's desire is.
It's a good question. I guess I guess maybe it's just as simple as that balance between exploration and combat, setting. So, for instance, the new one now, and this gets to some of the reboot issues that we're talking about. I mean, to set it up, I'll say my take on Alien is I'm less interested in a prequel because I don't feel there needs to be any explanation of what went before. I'm actually more interested in like, look, why don't you guys basically say 1 and 2 are canon, everything else is not, and basically have this be, quote, what the real Alien 3 should have been. You know what I'm saying? And just sort of like kill the rest and do a reboot going forward from there. In the case of Tomb Raider, the next Tomb Raider is being pitched as almost like an open world God of War. Right, where it's going to be, a lot more fantastical creatures, at least based on some concept art that was shown, and it's going to be open world. And I'm saying to myself, well, of the things that people have complained about with recent Tomb Raider games, I don't think anyone said, well, you know what would make Tomb Raider really awesome? Open world.
Right.
And it almost makes me wonder, like, do the developers and publisher really understand what they've embarked on here? Because the rule of thumb I use, and even as a consultant, I sit very outside of game development. But I say, like, look, making a game, any game, is hard. Making an open world game is probably 10 times as hard, and making an MMO 100 times as hard.
Right.
Why would you ramp up your difficulty factor 10x? For like what returns?
Do you know if the studio has any experience with it though? Because like if you look at Red Faction, that would be another case where you said, what business do they have taking this very very linear FPS, with player flexibility, of course, and the ability to shoot through walls and carve out caves and stuff, and turn it into a successful and a very very high quality open world game. Now I understand that studio also had exposure and access to the group that making people that were making Saints Row series and stuff.
Yeah,
so
it's
there
Volition.
was some that was that there was experience there. But so I guess I'm asking the same question for the people that are currently working on Tomb Raider.
If it's Crystal Dynamics, then no.
Is it Crystal Dynamics? I'm not certain.
I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure, but that would be a real concern because many teams have foundered on their first MMO. It's really, really hard to do. It's really, really hard to do right. And it creates when you say that your game is open world, it creates in people's minds a variety of expectations that the finished product may not deliver. Because now you got to have pedestrians, and how interactive are your pedestrians going to be, and how responsive is the world going to be, when isn't what people really want kind of like a hub and spoke system? A hub that's kind of halfway interesting and some places to go that are interesting. I mean, now a unified environment I could see being interesting, and maybe that's what they mean by open world, but I get really skeptical, and that's
you really almost have to either see the design document or have them pitch it to you to know for certain, because I can imagine some people, I don't know, I'm talking about my ass here, like say for example if Ubisoft promoted the most recent Prince of Persia as an open world game, but I could see, whether or not they actually did, I could see some people presenting it that way and saying, yeah, this makes sense. This is because it's closer for a general audience. It's going to make sense of how this game is designed. In layman's terms, it's closer to that than it is to maybe the Prince of Persia they played.
Yeah, a quick Google search says that the buzzwords being used are open world and survival horror. So, which starts to sound now like you're jamming buzzwords.
Right.
Yeah, that's what this whole thing
together.
Seems like to me. Like you're just, that's a great way to sell your game to marketing dweebs and other execs up the company ladder, is to sort of throw in the words that they think are going to be a big deal because of games like Prototype or Infamous or whatever, whether or not your franchise actually is well suited to that sort of genre.
Let's also say that the press is going to do the exact same thing if you don't on the publisher side. I mean, when you look at, half the times I look at coverage of games, it's like, this game is a combination of this and this, or it's this genre and this genre. And so it's like they're just saving some bad writer the opportunity to think he's being clever or perceptive by realizing that this game ultimately has something in common with an another
Right.
game in the same genre or something.
Right.
You know?
And
It
no,
is really
that's not
interesting. Yeah.
I was gonna say no. That's not an excuse, Sean, for you to go off on that guy again.
No. I was thinking of something I read. This is entirely had nothing to do with him. I won't name the site, but I was just like, I thought I'm going to dip back into this pool. I'm going to look at some game review. And then I got the fuck out of there.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's I guess where we're netting out is that I mean, any creative endeavor is hard, and there's parts of us that we crave the new and we crave the familiar at the same time, and maybe that's what a good reboot in its own way allows, and even a remake, because if it's a remake, presumably there are going to be a number of cast members are different and things like that, even if the story is largely similar or the same. But a lot of it, I think, has to do with just sort of safety, and you're now creating a challenge. Like, how do you exceed what went before? How do you even get back to the quality of what there was in the first place? You run the risk of alienating fans of the existing franchise, being compared negatively, and all those things. Yet at the same time, the sequeling approach, gave us Godfather 2, which is, some people disagree, but there are a large number of people who believe that it's better than the first one.
I'm in that camp. I think it's better.
One thing we haven't noted, I'm surprised, and I just thought of it now, is that the cultural precedent for the remake is far more, it reaches much further back than anything else, and that's just the way that plays have been produced forever. I mean, imagine someone, back in the day having like, oh, God, they're doing Hamlet again. Write something fucking new, Not to compare, these things to that, but it's like, I think, if anything, I guess that would attest to it perhaps being, what you said, be familiar with a bit of newness to it, being something that people ultimately like. I mean, of course, you had no other choice, right? You had no means of recording something for posterity and for people in different places at different times to see the performance.
Right.
So you absolutely had to do it that way. But
you're also
know.
talking about like other people's take on the source material rather than Hamlet 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right?
Of course,
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, there was a Hamlet 2 movie, but of course that was the whole joke about that movie, right? So.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about cover songs. Like, how do people feel about that? Some covers have been pretty amazing, better than the originals. It doesn't mean that someone can't come up with a song, and a lot of covers are not even recorded. They're performed primarily in concert, as a tribute to bands that the band that's performing are fans of, and things like that.
Did you see the video of Jay-Z doing No Sleep Till Brooklyn at the concert that the Beastie Boys had to cancel because of Adam's condition?
No, how was it?
It was, I don't know. It's divisive. I see a lot of people saying that they really like it. Of course, as far as a gesture goes, it's a great gesture, but it was just that song. It has so much. I mean, it's got I don't know. I'm not really comfortable talking about music, but it's got a certain like verve to it, And if he was delivering it like it's like a Mobb Deep song or something, I mean, if you just flatly monotone through No Sleep Till Brooklyn, it's like, okay.
Yeah, the Beastie Boys, are probably one of those like you probably shouldn't cover them bands. I agree that was a nice gesture by Jay-Z, but you probably should just leave the Beastie Boys alone. I mean, their whole thing is their shtick, right?
Or
I mean,
at least just take some amphetamines or something first,
But that's a flip side. Is do you want a cover to sound as much like the original as possible,
right?
Or do you want someone to
You got me.
do a fresh take on it, and deliver it differently?
I'm a dirty hypocrite. Except in his case, I think my problem was just that there just was no take on it, right? It was like,
right.
Okay, I know the lyrics to this.
Right.
I'm going to say them.
Mm-hmm.
And we happen to have the track loaded up in the background. So.
Wow. Well, yeah. I mean, it's fertile ground, and as we can see here, there are no really good answers. I do, there is part of me that says, at least on the Hollywood side, that it really is becoming, there's a certain bereftness of new ideas that you see a lot at the movies, and that you even see movies that are not in and of themselves remakes of anything, but they're so formulaic that they might as well be.
Yeah, you've seen it a billion times. Well,
I mean,
even like look at how closely what was it, Forrest Gump and what was the other incredible
Benjamin
case
Button
of Benjamin Button? Yeah, like entirely different movies, but I mean, you've seen the frame by frame comparison of the two, right? Same writer.
No, I haven't seen
it. Like, it's uncanny how I'll put a link to that in our show notes, but it's amazing. Anyway.
And what's crazy about that is that you have in David Fincher, a director that's probably as close to a Final Cut director, and I don't mean the program. I mean, he probably has tremendous say, if not complete and final say, over what goes into his movies.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that the person who originally wrote Forrest Gump was inspired by this short story, or that Forrest Gump had leaked into his head?
Wasn't it?
Say that again?
As far as I know, it was the same writer for both movies.
Oh, right, yeah. It was the same screenwriter. It was Eric Roth.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
And just telling the same story.
Yeah, except one's more of a comedy, one's more of a tragedy. One made hundreds of thousands of dollars and got Oscared up. The other one, or hundreds of millions, I should say. The other one didn't. But yeah, I mean, I would just say that I don't even always know what I want when I go see the movies. If it's a Friday night, I might be ready for I'm just generally an escapist fare. If it's a Saturday afternoon, I might be in the mood for something deeper. And I guess the marketplace will ultimately decide. I think the other thing that we see, the other trend that we see, is like with just all of these special effects driven movies. I mean, something like Transformers, which is just the level of crudeness on display. And when I say crude, I don't mean technically. It's technically very accomplished, but I just mean a certain crudeness of spirit in Michael Bay, that there's nothing too base for him to put up on screen, from a movie where like virtually all the women are dressed like strippers, to getting the main character's mother like high on dope. So that, I mean, it's just, you're just looking at this, you're just like, who is this for? Like, what does it say about the audience?
13-year-old boys, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like look, I was a 13-year-old boy, and I'm the same guy as well who has like a certain fondness for those 80s sex comedies. I mean, they're releasing Hard Bodies. They're releasing the Hard Bodies and Hard Bodies 2. They're re-releasing them, and like a lot of those.
God.
A lot of those like 80s sex comedies, at a time like where you had all these tax shelters, and so you could get these like, cheap movies that were, a lot of like TNA, and get people to the theaters. But I feel like at least those movies knew what they were, and you've got Michael Bay trying to mash all of this stuff together to a certain point, like where you're saying, like, well, not only is there no respect for the characters, but you're just like, is there any respect for the audience? When you're...
Of course there isn't.
I've never seen a Michael Bay movie, so I'm just going on what I've heard.
No, man, he's just like throwing. That guy's throwing chum from the bucket into the ocean with him. Here you fucking morons go. You want some fighting robots and some girls in bikinis? Here you go. Lap it up, you morons. I'm taking this all to the bank.
Do you think he's that cynical though, or is he like feeling it? Does he think he's like making something of merit?
Do you think that he's like sitting there on the Transformers 2 set thinking he's making Godfather 2?
I can't answer that, because there certainly is it impossible for you to imagine someone in the world who would sit there and sincerely want to make that movie and think that they were making a real credible piece of art? I mean, for me, the answer is yes. So it might as well be him.
I guess. I think as he's sitting in the director's chair, he's got a stripper on his lap giving him lines of coke, and they're both laughing all the way to the bank. That's what I think.
Look, I mean, to me, it's just, I just feel like, I guess the thing I come back to is, it's not that, because a lot of people, when you criticize movies like Transformers or Transformers 2 on this basis, the thing they come back to you with is like, well, not everything has to be an Oscar movie, or not everything has to be serious,
Right.
or whatever. I'm like, that's not the point. But I'm saying it's like, look at Die Hard, look at the first Lethal Weapon, look at
Like
the
Jurassic Park,
Jurassic Park, The Matrix.
All great movies. All great movies. Every
that's what-
example you're giving here is great.
And what
And
I'm
yeah,
saying is
but
like,
there's
why
a
can't that
difference.
be the floor as opposed to the ceiling?
Well, yeah, right.
I don't even get this. Matt says Transformers 3: The Legend of Curly's Gold 2. Why does that sound familiar? What's
That's-
Curly's Gold?
Oh my goodness. No, but that's what I'm saying is like, at a certain point, you're just kind of like, it just becomes, we can do anything in special effects. We can throw anything up on screen. We don't really have to try that hard. And it's not everyone. I mean, I thought there was a fair amount of stuff that was clever and engaging about the Star Trek reboot.
I really like the Star Trek reboot, but of course I'm not even remotely a Trekkie, so none of that meant anything to me.
There you go. And I'm
know-
sure that there are people who can quote that stuff line and verse will come back at you and say like, well, no, it sucked for these and these reasons. But that was the thing. Like, I was watching Transformers 2, and it was like, and on top of it all, it was 2.5 hours long. And I'm like, well, if you're going to abuse me, that's one thing. If you're going to abuse me for
Yeah.
longer than 90 minutes, I guess it's my fault because I sat there rather than left. But it was just like,
Yeah.
like I said, like a certain depressing crudeness of spirit, like where you're just kind of like, you can't even, like, is this even a frat boy mentality or something? Like, it's just like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'm gonna ram stuff in your face that I think is gonna, make your eyeballs jump, and then I'll do it
Yeah.
again ad nauseum. I don't understand that mentality, but it's also the highest grossing movie of the year, if I'm not mistaken.
That's just so depressing. I've heard that from a lot of people, though, and I didn't see it, so who am I to talk? But from people who I know who saw it, who were Transformers fans going in, they felt like it was very much like an assault on them, an assault on their senses. I have one friend who took his wife and his kids. The whole
man.
family are fans of Transformers, and he said when they got out of the movie, they were all in a bad mood, just because. And not just because the movie was bad, but they felt like they had been like violated, just because it was so.
Why didn't they
assaulting
walk
on their
out
sense.
then? Like, fuck them. They have themselves to blame.
Well,
Like,
sure,
that's an art
but
form. Walking out of a shitty movie, like you're not in prison there.
I agree. Well, I feel the same way now, and I had to learn it over the years about books as well. I've learned that it's okay to put a book down that you're not enjoying. But I used to feel the sense of responsibility, like, well, I've committed. I'm stuck with it. I know there's 600 pages to go, and I'm just going to fucking eat it every night before I go to bed, like bad medicine.
What's the last book you put
Eventually I'll
down?
finish it.
What's the last book you put down?
The last book I put down, good question. You may have to come back to me on this, but shit, I just can't remember. It would have been some novel of some sort. Can't remember.
What about you, Sean? You put down books, you finish.
I will always put it down if I'm not really, really digging it, or if I don't think it's worthwhile. I mean, because it depends. Like, right, digging isn't always the appropriate word if it's like nonfiction. In that case, I might despise it, but I want to continue to argue with it and understand the point of view that's expressed in it. But I think the last one I put down was for a while. I was reading a few books about the Depression era. And I forget which one it was, but it was so like just obnoxiously written with an agenda to basically just take every step possible to prove that the Roosevelt administration was entirely incompetent. And I don't know. After a while, I was like, yeah, I got enough of this. Oh, here's the one that I remember really putting down though with. For a while, everyone was recommending Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and so I picked it up on Face without reading anything about it. And I think I got like 30 pages into it when I realized immediately that it was the equivalent of like Celestine Prophecy or something, that it was a bunch of bullshit, and then it was put together with a didactic intention. And just really ham-handedly. So, for example, in those first 30 pages, he was, Thailand or something, and he was watching some puppet show. And the puppet show, of course, was outlining the entire point of the book in miniature. And So I put it down at that point and started doing some research on the guy's credibility and stuff. And then, yeah, there it was. So that was, and I was kind of ashamed of that. That was the kind of book where I like when I take a stack of books back to the bookstore to get some slight resale value. I was kind of ashamed to have it in my bag. I put it down in the bottom.
Wow. Well, for me, I rarely walk out of movies, though I really should have, and I should have walked out of Transformers, and I rarely don't finish books. But the over the last 15 years, the two books that I can remember putting down and not pretty much not coming back to were Blood Meridian by
Really?
Cormac McCarthy.
by Cormac McCarthy and His
love that
Dark
book.
Materials by Philip Pullman.
Okay, I put down the third His Dark Materials book. Yeah, that's one I put down. The third one.
Now the McCarthy thing was Cormac McCarthy thing was interesting. Like it was kind of like the lack of punctuation that just made it hard to read.
He was a bit on like a Faulkner kick or something there. That was one of his earlier works.
Yeah, and
And it seemed as though every line-
for a long time I didn't you know I was like I didn't bother with any of his stuff. I was like, but then I went back and read. I went and picked up The Road and No Country for Old Men, and I managed to get through those. So now I'm actually curious to go back. I think I will try the Border Crossing trilogy, I guess it's called.
Funny because No Country for Old Men was his most stylistically sparse prose, and it was a deliberate decision to go and dial it back and do something like that, to do just basically a good literary thriller. But I'll be curious to see what you think of the Border trilogy, which I think are fantastic.
I love
And
them too.
they're somewhere in between The Road, which is with the one end of the extreme, you could put Blood Meridian, the other end you could put No Country for Old Men. Just behind No Country is The Road, and then in between all of that is the Border.
All right, so I might be backing my way towards the Border trilogy, and then His Dark Materials. It just didn't grab me. I gave it a good 100 pages or so, 50 to 100 pages, and it just didn't. I was just on the outside of it the whole time.
It does start slow, for sure. The first book starts slow. I think it's worth reading. I actually lost it by the third book only because I felt like the anti-church agenda, which I know it wasn't what he was saying, it was just the way he was saying it that got to me. It became less the story and more him preaching.
Was this the narrative voice that you're talking about, or the point of view of a character in the?
The narrative voice and the plot too was like, okay, I get it. I mean, the allegory is there, from the beginning. Really, it's not it's basically anti-organized religion, I should say, and it's not like it was anything I had an issue with in terms of what he was saying. It's just like I wanted to enjoy the fiction. I didn't want the
right.
The
So
I felt it was inelegant by the third
This is why
book.
you like Brothers Karamazov so much more, is that that point of view is contained within characters and certain events, but it's not omnipresent in the narrative.
Oh yeah, I mean that just reads like a brilliant mystery, I mean, just it's an incredible book just in terms of the characters and the story, and that's what I want out of my books. They can have the point of view, of course, is what the book is about. Of course, means a lot, but I want them to tell it to me in an artistic way, and I felt that the first two His Dark Materials books straddle that line well, but by the third book, he was like too caught up in his ideology.
Proust called that kind of didactic writing. Well, he compared that kind of didactic writing, and that goes for Confessions of an Economic Hitman as well, to books with their or ideas with their price tags still on them.
Yeah,
and it's basically, you think of it just like a really ostentatious attempt to show that ultimately the book isn't what matters. It's that I paid, in that case, that I paid this amount of money for it, and in that case, the book's not really what matters. It's that I'm trying to get this point across to you. Maybe in an entertaining fashion or something, and that's definitely the difference between like the art of Dostoevsky and that, where it manages to have a really scathing indictment of organized religion, and yet it's situated in the book in such a way that you can't mistake it for
Right. I mean, that was the interesting thing for me. It's like the point of view in his Dark Materials is not one I disagree with, and even given that, the book still offended me. Not offended me, but it was just like, okay, dude, I get it, but like, what about your characters?
Right. This is Ayn Rand also.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
You done did it now.
Hey, I just remembered we were talking, like, it might have been right before you joined in, and guy, about how we were playing Battlefield 43. So I was curious if you were playing that too. And then the last thing, like, just to wrap up the whole sequelitis and this larger discussion, I wanted to know what you think about Pixar making yet another Toy Story. And it's interesting because Pixar, of course, makes new properties all the time, but then now and then they return to come back to a movie. But it's like, why Toy Story?
Well, I'll go reverse because I'm actually not playing Battlefield 1943 right now. I played it at some events that EA had over the course of the year, but I haven't downloaded it or played it yet for real. In terms of Pixar, good question. I don't have strong feelings about it either way. I mean, probably because in some ways it's animated. So I feel like I give them more license and leeway to do that stuff. I guess what's interesting is, if I'm not mistaken, it's their only property that they've done sequels on, right? They didn't do a sequel to A Bug's Life. They didn't do a sequel to Finding Nemo.
Incredibles,
Cars,
which I would like to see a sequel to.
I'd love to see an Incredibles sequel. Well, there we go. Again, part of the problem. But I think Pixar's formula, and I think they do have a formula, is that, for the most part, is that it's a secret life of, right? So the secret life of toys, secret life of bugs, secret life of fish, secret life of cars, and monsters, exactly. And I guess you could say in some ways they went away from that with Up, though, or maybe Up is the secret life of old people. And I don't know, Jeff, maybe you want to weigh in on that. But the thing I liked about, one of the things I really liked about Up, that I think that anyone who works in games and games that are story based should check out, is the first, I don't know, 10 minutes. So this is going to be a spoiler. Have you guys seen it?
I haven't. Our entire office went to see it, and I got sick that day, so I missed it for free.
Oh, man. There you go. You and your irritable bowel syndrome.
It was, but that was because I ate at your house, though.
Now we got to fight. You remember how I got used to getting fights with people for criticizing? Well, I guess that's my cooking. You didn't criticize my mom's cooking, because if you did, I'd have to fight you. But you can criticize my cooking all you want. Anyway, I'll just say, because I don't want to spoil it for you guys should just see it. But it's the distillation of a life, and it's told very efficiently and very, very movingly. And I mean, like, I don't cry easily, though I do cry a little easier the older I get. I guess I'm getting sentimental in my old age, but I still don't cry that much. And I was like, I had to like dab away some tears. It was like, it was definitely moving, and I like to do it that quickly, that way. And we don't need to get in a long conversation about in-game cinematics or real time or all that stuff, but I there's definitely lessons there for how efficiently they were able to communicate like the span of a life and and wring emotion out of the viewer in a particular way. As for Toy Story 3, how I feel about it being a sequel, I don't have strong feelings about it one way or another. Toy Story probably wasn't my favorite of their movies. It's not that I dislike it, but I mean, to me, like, the standouts would be parts of Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, and the first half of WALL-E.
Yeah,
would be the ones that stand out.
That one. Jeff, when were you born?
When was I born?
Yeah, can you say which year?
Yeah, I could say 1961.
Okay, I wanted to make sure you weren't a woman. Okay, you're not old enough to. I was just gonna. I mean, if the whole notion of the changing in America's, both fantasies of boys, but also larger interests in the country as being epitomized with the conflict between the cowboy toy and the spaceman toy. But you're definitely on the side of the spaceman.
I'm definitely on the side of the spaceman, but there's also some crossover there because I also grew up in a time when there were still a ton of westerns on television, and that was just the norm. Bonanza was on every Sunday, Gunsmoke, all those shows. That's still my era. So at that time, the Western, and these were not ironic Westerns, these were not postmodern Westerns like Unforgiven, these were just straight up, cowboys and Indian stuff. Even frickin' Zorro was on at the time. Not Zorro.
So you were the kid who owns both Woody
Lone Ranger.
and Buzz.
Yes, I was one of those kids who had both. And G.I. Joe, for that matter.
Make the
and this was
spaceman fight the
G.I.
cowboy.
Joe when G.I. Joe was a guy, not a team, which I didn't even know about till like a year ago.
Well, not only that, he was a real American hero as opposed to be a secret world government with black helicopter hero.
Yeah, right, exactly. No, he was like he was an army soldier.
And he was, Jeff, just so we don't let this go by, that was a reference to yet another sequel that shouldn't be made.
Yes, it is another reference.
I feel awkward. Sorry.
Back on Toy Story, I'm one of those people who again like the sequel better. I like Toy Story 2 better. I loved the story of Jessie. I loved how they integrated with it. I thought it was very moving. I thought it was maybe the first example of Pixar really demonstrating a lot of heart to go with the brilliant animation and storytelling. And because their record is nearly perfect, right? I mean, they're nearly at 100%. I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm psyched for Toy Story 3. I think the trailer is super cute. And also just to update, I checked briefly there while we were recording here, and Cars 2 is actually in the works. So that's the only other franchise of there where they've agreed to do a
favorite
sequel.
Pixar movie too. Well,
yeah, what are you gonna do?
Maybe along with Monsters.
So yeah, and back on the spaceman versus cowboy thing, it was not surprisingly around the time of the moon landing, which just had its anniversary, that it became full on, spaceman was the cooler thing to have. That's about the time when we all started bringing what was that stuff? Tang in our lunch boxes. Yeah. all the boys, and those frickin' like horrible like moon sticks or whatever they were that we ate, because we wanted to be just like the astronauts. So, yep.
And what a transition now is that, there are, for the most part, no more cowboys, and the United States is now going to be relegated to hitching rides into space.
Yeah. Yes. It actually is crazy to think that there was a time when we actually had a plan to go to another planet and set foot on it. And just how awesome that was.
Or there was a time when people didn't doubt the veracity of the moon landings.
So you saying it's a time for a remake of Capricorn 1 with Michael Vick and with Michael Vick in the O.J. Simpson role?
There you go. Perfect. Excellent recasting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the space stuff. It does remind me, though, but I remember reading, when I first read, it was either 2010, and the notion that China would actually be exploring the solar system seemed so outlandish, but it seemed so forward-thinking at the time. And then to see that now, maybe we're the country that can't get to the moon anymore, but we did. And it's just, it's weird, because, I obviously grew up in the Challenger era, so
right.
It was... And it's part of you have to stop and think about it, think about the enormous investments involved, but just to basically for the species, when you put it in these terms, to just turn its back to the universe,
Yeah. That's why it was so exciting. Being an 8-year-old boy, the timing couldn't have been perfect. I can only imagine as an adult how much even more exciting it would have been, though I wouldn't have understood that as an 8-year-old. But the fact that we actually went to another planet, not a planet, but we went to another, another sphere out there in space and set foot on it, is just so fucking exciting. And it was so innocent in a way. There was no. I don't know. Maybe there was.
You must have been pretty young. Because despite the seeming innocence, of course, it was a figuratively a bloody battle between the world's two existing superpowers.
Right, which I didn't get as an 8-year-old. But I certainly remember it, like, as clear as day on television. And then, like me, like everybody else, I had, like, the model. You know, I had a model that I built of Apollo on the moon and, you know, painted it for weeks obsessively, you know, that kind of stuff. That was
It was
just
also
so exciting.
so. It's not as though it just happened out of nowhere, too. The entire first half of the 20th century was so preoccupied with, you know, what our closest neighbors might be, you know, with what's on the moon, what's on Mars, and it was like finally getting to take a look and see what the reality of things was, you know.
Well, what do you think? What do you think is responsible for sort of or what's it going to take to get space to fire the public's imagination in the way that it once did?
Halo ODST and Mass Effect 2.
There you go.
And after that, we will we will roll out the new shuttle at the beginning of next year. And
Actually,
no, I don't know.
isn't
Sorry, I'm ducking your question.
I thought I heard something in the news recently about how, like, in the next few weeks, Mars is going to be closer to Earth than it's going to be, like, in the next some crazy amount of time, like 15,000 years or something like that.
And we're not.
Maybe
Are we ready by any means to go get Mars?
Oh, of course not. I think it just means, like, we'll be able to see it in the sky clearer than we ever have been until now.
We can't put a ladder up from my roof and just climb up.
Oh, you know, you reminded me of an awesome Italo Calvino short story.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, go ahead, though.
Nice. Kick it highbrow, homie.
Thank you. Kicking it highbrow with Cosmic Comics, which is a brilliant collection of stories by Italo Calvino. And one of the stories is about the ability in the old days where you could put a ladder up and get to the moon to scoop out the cheese from the moon. So those looking for awesome literature / sci-fi, maybe we could put it in the show notes. Italo Calvino's Cosmic Comics. Great stuff.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Well, no, but I just feel that there's, I don't know. There's something. I remember as a kid, I used to be excited about space exploration, space travel, and that, and I don't think about it that much these days.
Is it? Do you think it's tied to the search for extraterrestrial life? That after the most recent Mars mission failed to turn up anything conclusive, that a lot of that interest has waned? Because I know up until then, I mean, that was obviously an enormously expensive undertaking.
Well, I know for a fact that the one thing that's strange, I don't know if it's still the case, but when I was at Newsweek, one of the, you know, there were certain types of covers that did really well. Religion did really well for us. Medicine did well, and space. Space-related covers did quite well, but usually they were tied to things like, you know, Mars, or, you know, were we going to get struck by a comet, or, you know, that kind of stuff. And
the interest could also be a subset of the primary interest in the religious covers too.
True. But I just wonder what it would take to fire up the public's imagination again. And, you know, is it going to just get left to the private sector? I mean, you had John Carmack, you know, one of the founders of id Software, competing for the X Prize, which was to have, I guess, to create a reusable rocket. You know, go up into space and stuff like that. But I just don't know. And, you know, maybe it would make sense from a branding perspective for NASA to do a licensing deal with what is it, Foundation 343, or whatever the division of Microsoft is that's handling Halo, the Halo brand, or to make a deal with EA for Mass Effect, and just sort of, you know, find ways to get people more fired up. But I do really feel like there's something, like it's an end of an era. There's something really sad about that.
I think the competition was no coincidence during the Cold War and the dawn of the space age. And I think that new rivals that are emerging now could be one thing that spurs us back into being interested.
So if Bin Laden sent a rocket up, like, we'd be like, fuck it, we're on it.
Totally.
Certainly. Well, if Bin Laden can shoot down a satellite, we would. But China has already proven their ability to do so. And when China, say, lands on the moon, and they put their flag down, but in addition they say, this is our territory, then I bet suddenly we'll see renewed interest.
So I guess we have the answer to the question: war. What is it good for?
It's good
Yes,
for
we do.
Battlefield. There's the dumpiest transition
Oh,
ever. But it's good for
there you
Battlefield.
go.
Now tell us about it, Joe.
I'm digging it. I am. I was a little late to the party
Yeah,
on
I wonder
it.
why that is.
Yeah, I love Battlefield 1943. I was late to the party because I was worried about the Xbox Live stuff that I'd heard about. So actually, in the meantime, I was playing a lot of Battlefield Heroes, which, in its own limited way, it's a free game. Is pretty fun, I have to say. And what I really liked about Battlefield Heroes, for me personally, was that it didn't seem to be attracting a lot of hardcore shooter guys. So I could actually hold my own pretty well there, like to a surprising degree. I kept end up being at the top of the leaderboard, which was like great for my ego until I just started to realize after a number of rounds that actually everybody here just kind of sucks. So, but I have been playing 43 the past couple weekends, and again I'm finding it to be very similar to my experience with the old Battlefield series on the PC a long time ago, which is there's plenty of people who just don't get into the whole thing, which feels to me is like actually sort of the point of the game, or at least part of the point of the game, which is the flag capturing. So I can actually run up really high point counts in almost every round I ever play by just concentrating on that shit. Like, it's crazy to me how many people get caught up in battles that actually don't even matter.
Right.
So I just do the thing of like running around solo, as an infantry guy, just capturing flag after flag, and end up high in the leaderboard. I'm partially playing to my own strength because I tend to lose in the shooting battles, especially with the controller rather than a mouse and keyboard, just because my aim is so fucked on those things. But I'm really digging it, and I am surprised, too, by how great it looks. I also really love, as a guy who's spent years looking for servers on my PC, I do love the seamlessness of the quick battles and all that stuff. In general, I am pleasantly surprised with Battlefield. I know I'm an EA employee, so take it all with a grain of salt, but I am happy with it, so yeah.
I agree. I've been playing. Actually, I was 5 minutes late to when we started recording because I was playing some more, and I just got about my best streak ever. I had 36 points in a round, which was pretty surprising to me. And I got it all by exploiting the old issues that the Battlefield series has always had, and that has to do with the spawning and the capture point system. But
yeah.
So I should say the positive first, because I like the game. I enjoy playing it, and the only real negative I have and this was entirely expected, is that it makes me wish that the PC version had launched simultaneous with the console ones, because I feel like I'm underwater when I'm playing, and that's not just because the controller is innately inferior when it comes to precision aiming to a mouse, and I think that's indisputable. But this game doesn't have aim assist, but moreover, it's really that I'm so familiar with each one of the maps and with the Battlefield experience that's the thing. It's like, oh, you're going back to your favorite place, but then I don't know, you can't eat the hot sauce because it gives you indigestion to some degree or something. You can't have as much of the hot sauce as you used to eat or something. But it's funny that you say that, how a lot of people aren't capturing stuff, because that's always been a problem for the Battlefield series, and I think my guess now is that they just have come to embrace it. I mean, there's no other way around it, really, because so many other games that have imitated Battlefield have devised, their independent solutions to the problem. And the problem is basically that you have, n number of spawn and capture points, and you're able to freely go around and get them in whatever order you want, but also to lose them in whatever order you want. And outside of them putting their priority, like nudging people to prioritize certain ones by having them give you some benefits, like say an additional plane will spawn here, or the bunker that now commands the bomber squadron is located here. People just tend to roam back and forth. And so now it's like the easiest way to score high is to pick a point that's in a strategic area and to hang out there and defend it as long as you can, because you always have the advantage on defense, especially. And then most people just don't. They expect the territories to be abandoned as quickly as they're captured.
You're right.
Globally, it makes for
it drives me fucking crazy when I spawn in to a place that's like captured and there's like 3 guys hanging there. Go out. Go do something. Why are you,
But the second they do that, though, you will lose that point, and that's kind of.
I know. Yeah.
And so like when I talk about other independent solutions, like Frontlines would be an example, and that's where they tie like 2 to 3 capture points together, and once you hit any one of those or 2 of the 3, it'll lock down that as the front line, and then make it so that everything on the other side of that is what's contested.
Right. Yeah, that's nice.
It's for a big public game, it makes it just pretty chaotic. It's a matter of finding your own fun, kind of like in an open world game that didn't actually have a campaign to speak of, and that works just fine. I guess they just embraced that, But
they did.
But if you're with a squad of people, it's different, because then you can say, especially in the big PC games when you'd have 64 people on a team, you could really just assign people to quadrants and say, this is your area, don't fucking leave it. And
yeah, I think that's why I like the series so much, is that that I can like find my own way to score points and rank up and level that doesn't involve just shooting. I mean, I eventually had to I was a huge deathmatcher in the old days. I was younger and I played them for years and years, so I was good at them. But there was definitely a point where I just got like shut out of straight up death matches just because I hadn't maintained my skill level, and it got to the point where like I can't even go into Counter-Strike. I'm just dead in 2 seconds every time. Whereas in Battlefield that can happen, and certainly you can get in streaks where you keep spawning and dying. But I can also like find my own way to stay alive, and if I get on this like flag capturing mission, just to do that on my own, I can run up my score and end up at the top of leaderboards. So it makes me feel like I can compete in my own way.
It's funny you say that, because I noticed on his Facebook update, Harvey Smith, who's with Arcane Studios now, he wasn't complaining, but he's bemoaning his own, lack of skill at the game, and just how for him the experience is a matter of spawning, being stabbed, spawning elsewhere, and having a bomb land on you, spawning in a third location just in time for a tank to run over the top of you. And that really is going to be, no matter how good you are, that is going to be your Battlefield experience for a certain percentage of the time. And the thing that compensates for it is that the other percentage of the time, and if everything is going well, it's the greater percentage, you're the person who's dropping the bomb on someone's head or running them over with the tank or stabbing them as they spawn. And it's kind of like you really just have to. It's about finding those grooves.
And
exploiting them, and that's how you get the really high score. The other thing I do like to say that I appreciate now more than ever is just the dual tactical and strategic component to the game, where every time you spawn, you're faced with a strategic decision as to where you're going to spawn back in. And you could say, I noticed that there are no allies at this base. I'm going to go here to defend it because it's been undefended for about 25 seconds, and that means that there's a huge likelihood that people are on their way in to take it over. Or I'm going to go here, or I'm not going to go here is just as important. If you notice that there are enemy tanks and stuff hanging around, you're just going to put yourself in that frustrating scenario by appearing right where you're going to get fucking blown up,
Right.
Like that
whole... you have to, you have to just go with those grooves. I mean, that's usually the point at which I quit the game. Like, I can handle, like, a certain amount of it, right? I mean, you go through, like, okay, spawn, die, spawn, die, spawn, die. But, at some point when it goes on long enough, and if I've already been playing the game for an hour or two, it's one of those that just makes me go, oh, okay, I'm done.
And then you'll come back later, yeah.
Yeah, right. That's just part of the experience.
One thing, since you got the contact, please ask EA that, because right now there's no ability to choose teams. So you make a squad with a bunch of friends, and then you go in and join the game, and then as soon as the teams are imbalanced, it auto-switches you right out of your squad into the other team. And so suddenly there you are on the opposite team when all of your friends are on the other side now blowing you up.
Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed that. And the one thing that I really don't like in Battlefield Heroes, but again, hard to really complain about a free game, but I don't like the ability that you can't switch class while you're in the middle of a match.
Right, and you understand why that is, though.
I do, yeah.
I mean, technical reasons for them loading your persistent character, and I mean, I'm sure they can overcome them, but...
Yeah, exactly.
It's weird. I wonder if now, but knowing more about the circumstances that games are made in, I'm much more like willing to forgive certain things. Like when I see something strikes me as purely a design element, and I'm going to be a lot more critical than I am if I realize that, okay, this is a real fucking problem. Like like they needed, whatever the case is, like they needed a streaming tunnel here somehow because they're using Unreal Engine 3. They had to find some way to slow you down so they could stream this next level. I'm not gonna sit there and complain. Why the fuck did they decide to make the character stop and talk now?
Right.
Whereas if it were,
Well, right. I mean, that's a subject for a whole other podcast, but I think that's the big lesson many of us learn when we switch sides is like there usually is a pretty damn good reason for everything. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was the right decision or it was a good idea, but there was an idea.
There was reason,
that old
yeah.
thing of there was a reason. And
that's
it was
exactly.
usually, yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying that's exactly why I assume that DICE decided that they're comfortable with the flow of their matches. And that
Right.
they think it's a good thing, Like I'm not. There's no. It would be entirely wrong-headed to think that they had not played all the other games that have imitated what they've been doing over the years.
Right.
Well, Sean,
Yeah.
winding down, were you surprised at how positive the response has been to Battlefield 1943, considering that these days all console shooters exist in the shadow of Call of Duty 4?
Not really, because the game has always been good. Its formula's been perfect, and the problem, it has not been perfect, but it's been very good and timeless to an extent. You can continually remake this game and upgrade it and make changes, but keep the central recipe there. And it was a matter of getting it on console in the right format, specifically the multiplayer, but and having all the things come together. They got the shooting, the gunplay element up to console standards, which have been really high, massively improved by companies like Bungie over the years, and then as well as Infinity Ward on console and PC. But yeah, I don't know. It didn't surprise me for some reason. I thought if they get this right and it's Battlefield, and it's fun, the simple act of shooting people, sighting someone and shooting them works well. They have a winner on their hands, and more than anything, I'm just happy to see that is the case, because you know how it is. It's really frustrating if you like a series and it's proved its potential to you on the PC for years, and it's just a matter of now putting it in another audience's hands, and then the worst case is if they do, and it's fucked up for some reason, and you're like, God, well, trust me, it was better, and then it starts to get into one of those situations where you, where someone's like totally high on marijuana and they're telling you about the greatest song ever. And then you're like, dude, that shit sucks. And then they're like, well, you got it. You just got to be high, man.
Well, if even Edge gave it a 9, there's something good going on there.
Yep. Good stuff. Indeed. Are
Well,
we done
Jeff,
here,
Jeff,
boys?
that's your cue.
You want to bring us home?
Yeah. Well, that's all we got for you this week. How's that? We'll be back again next week with some more podcast goodness. Actually, not next week. 2 weeks? Is that
2
when we're
weeks.
back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are any of you fellas going to Germany besides me?
I wish. You make me jealous.
Not me. I'll be going to Europe for work, but not Germany.
Not Gamescom?
Not Gamescom. But we will all be at PAX, correct?
We
Yes.
will all be at PAX.
Well,
Yes.
speaking of fucking remakes and shitty rehashes, we're
There you
going to
go.
be reuniting GFW Radio for a
Indeed.
live performance.
Well, that's a
Yep.
whole other level of That's more like the band getting back together, which is this a whole other level. We don't have time to get into that now, but maybe in the next show we can sort of,
Yeah.
compare you guys to, I don't know, Foreigner or Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Or,
Styx.
exactly.
Spinal Tap. Yeah.
Spinal Tap. There you go. There you go.
Any kind of like has been forgotten, pathetic band trying to relive its former glory days. That's what we're doing.
Attack.
All right. But the Spinal Tap mention was pretty deft. That was a good way to plug another EA-related property in Rock Band with
There you go.
Spinal Tap coming to Rock Band.
Yeah, that's exciting. Though not
Wait,
as exciting
I-
as
see-
Rock Band Beatles.
Spinal Tap is coming to Rock Band? Actually, that's perfect.
Yeah, the album, I guess they re-recorded it with the band members, and it's coming to I think next week. I think next week it comes to either next week or in a few weeks it comes to Rock Band. So yeah, we'll
That's
have
cool.
to we'll have to jump on and play Big Bottoms.
Did you guys see? By the way, did you see Spinal Tap on Colbert the other day?
No,
They were on Colbert, and I have to say it was depressing. It made me unhappy because it just seemed like it just made me sad. I love that movie more than anything, but I don't want to see them still doing it. So
So you're
And on that
pushing
note-
for, you're hoping for Best in Show too?
yeah, I am. Or maybe what was the '60s hippie one they made? Help me out here.
Oh, don't remember.
The movie where they were all '60s folk guys.
Oh,
what I'm talking
Mighty
about?
Wind. Mighty
There you go,
Wind.
Mighty Wind too. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm ending the podcast on an awkward, depressing note with that.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we'll be
All
back.
right. All right. Okay.
Smell you guys later.
All right, and hopefully we'll have Luke and Robert back when we reunite.
Yeah, you dumb fucks, get on here. We're not asking that much of you. Do this once every couple weeks. Or you're fucking fired. Goodbye.